Hello, everybody. Hi. Okay. Hello. Let me triple check that I'm actually live. You know me. I don't want to. There we go. I don't want to accidentally be yapping without actually talking with you guys. Okay. Perfect. 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 Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream. Happy Friday. I know it's been a terrible week. Let's just be real. Let's just be honest with ourselves that it's been a terrible week. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about it too much because I just don't think I have a lot to say that's helpful at this time. I'm hoping I'm able to tap into my communities, and that's what I encourage you to do, is to really lean on the people around you, lean on the people you trust, and yeah, we're going to need community now more than ever. So um I know that's easier said than done, especially when you've got these apps that are designed to isolate us. And I say that knowing full well that I'm on one of the apps right now and that it can be used for connection, absolutely, and community. And that's my goal. But also, there's a lot of aspects of these apps that are designed to separate us. And so we just got to come together. And that's what I'm going to say about that. What I wanted to talk about today is mood swings, right? Mood swings, emotional dysregulation, basically when you feel so much, you feel like you are drowning. That's what I wanted to talk about today. So if you have any questions about mood swings, about emotions, about how to deal with really big feelings, please let me know in the chat. I'm super happy to answer questions. I'm really happy to basically do some free coaching here on YouTube. If you guys want, you can get a taste of what it's like to work with me. So if you have questions, drop them in the chat. I'm happy to answer. But in the meantime, I just want to talk to you a little bit about my experience with mood swings, and then we'll talk about some of the solutions, right? So my experience with mood swings is that I am a very, very sensitive person, right? Before I knew I was autistic, I identified as an HSP, a highly sensitive person. I don't personally identify with that anymore. Autistic feels like a better, more robust, more well-explained explanation. Anyway, you know what I mean? It feels like a better fit than HSP for me. I've been pretty judgmental about the term HSP in the past. I'm kind of rolling back that opinion now. I think whatever identity works for you is something you should hold on to. And who am I to tell you who to be, right? That's kind of my new state of mind. Um, so, what was I saying? Oh, I've always been a really, really sensitive person. I was a really sensitive kid. I cried all the time. Very, very sensitive. And now I'm a very, very sensitive adult who cries all the time. I actually don't cry as much anymore, but thankfully that's nice. But there are times where I'm like, I kind of wish I could cry. Like crying would feel good right now. So I'm working on it. I'm working on that balance. But I've always been a really sensitive person with a lot of really big feelings, right? So one of my biggest frustrations when I started therapy, which I started when I was 19, um, one of my biggest frustrations was when my therapist would say stuff like, "Oh, you need to ride the wave of your emotions," right? It was this idea that like you can't fight the ocean, so stop trying, just like ride the waves. And like, you know, when you're in the ocean, if you've been in the ocean, how like you can bob with the waves, but if you try to like fight the ocean, if you try to stay in one spot, they're just going to smack you in the face. That's where that saying comes from, ride the wave of your emotions. And I get that. Except my emotions, not so much anymore, not as often at least anymore, but back in the day when I first started therapy and they were telling me this, I was like, you are seriously misunderstanding what's happening here because this is not like a gentle ocean wave. What I'm going through is a freaking tsunami. You can't ride out a tsunami. You need to make it not happen somehow, right? Like you can't ride out a tsunami. Um and so that was my understanding of what was going on, was like, look, you're telling me to just like vibe with something that's trying to destroy me. And that didn't feel right. That didn't feel helpful. That wasn't what I needed to hear. And it didn't help me manage my emotions any better. So I have actually designed an entire course, which I will go ahead and drop the link to that in the chat. But I've designed an entire course called Managing Mood Swings. And you can actually get it for 50% off right now using code MOODSWING. There we go. That's only valid until midnight, basically until the 27th. Once we get to 12:01 on the 27th, that code won't work anymore, but it should work until midnight on Sunday, the 26th. So anyway, I have a whole course that's basically how to ride the wave of your emotions when the wave is a tsunami, right? um, and that course goes through some of the skills that I've learned. Now, full disclosure, total transparency, I also use therapy and medication to deal with my mood swings. And those are two things I cannot provide you with as a life coach, right? But what I can provide you with are some of the other tools I've developed and learned over the years to deal with these really big moods. Um, so, what are some of those tools? Let's talk about it. By the way, if you have any questions or anything y'all want to chat about, even if it's like kind of unrelated, please let me know in the chat. I'm always super happy to talk with you guys about this stuff. Um, if you have any questions about my experience with like mood swings, I guess I didn't really dig too deep into that. Part of me is like avoiding it. Like, I don't want to admit that I'm like kind of not a stable person all the time, but I think it's better for us to just talk about it and be open. So I was actually misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder for 6 years because my mood swings were so extreme. People felt that bipolar was the only logical explanation, even though now my current team of mental health professionals strongly disagree. Um, Oh, let's see. What does Mrs. CPC say? 14 years ago in hospital, I was told the exact same useless, inappropriate comment. And in art therapy, I drew a child on the beach tied down in the face of an approaching tsunami. Wow. Hey, first of all, that's powerful. And second of all, like, that's crazy that we had the exact same analogy, but that is how it feels sometimes. It's just so unhelpful to tell us to ride the wave. It shows a profound misunderstanding of what we're actually going through and a lack of empathy and a lack of compassion, I think. And that's really frustrating. And I'm sorry that that happened to you, but also I hope that you feel very welcomed here where I understand really big mood swings. I understand feelings that threaten to swallow you whole. Um, so especially my depression was really, really bad. And it wasn't just depression. Like it couldn't have just been depression. Not just depression on its own is still debilitating and terrible, but it couldn't have solely been depression because of the way my moods would go back and forth really like violently. My husband used to, when we were dating, he would sort of joke, but also he was mostly serious, say like, "You're giving me whiplash. I don't know how you're going to feel moment to moment." And it's like, it's a lot, And I'm like, yeah, imagine feeling it. I know it's a lot. Which, he was always very good about. He knew that me experiencing the emotions was always going to be harder than him experiencing me having big emotions, and he's always acknowledged that, which is nice. But yeah, I've always had a lot of what's called emotional dysregulation, which is basically just where your moods are very inconsistent, very unpredictable, very all over the place, and that is really, really hard. Not that, constant depression is easier because it's not, but the back and forth and experiencing every emotion under the sun within like 48 hours is very exhausting and very difficult, and that's kind of been my experience. And even now, like, yes, my emotions are much better, like I said, therapy, medication, and all the tools that are in this course, right, the Managing Mood Swings course. Even with all those things, I still experience a lot of big emotions that feel really difficult to hold. um and I don't say that to make you feel hopeless. I just say it because I think it's important that we're transparent. I really liked the book Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. It's about a girl with OCD who's dealing with grief over the death of her father and navigating high school and all this stuff. It's a very beautiful book, but at the end of the book, she's like recovering from a really bad sort of episode of her OCD. Like it's really flared up and gotten really bad, and she's recovering. And at the end of the book, the main character says, like, I feel like as I'm supposed to tell you that that was it. I got better. But that's not how chronic health conditions work. That's not how OCD works. And the main character says, like, it did come back. And I went to the hospital several times, and I had kids, and my life got better and my life got worse. And it's cyclical, right? And that like resonates with me so much. It's so beautiful because as much as I hate that my mood swings are always going to be around and always be part of my life, and I really do wish I could make them go away, there is something very cool about radical acceptance and just accepting like, this is me. This is my experience, and I'm not going to apologize for it. And I think there is something really powerful in that. So I don't know for how long I've been able to do this, but occasionally when I have the big sad come over me, I can almost watch it and kind of counsel myself. That is one of my big pieces of advice for big mood swings, actually. So that's really cool, Starshade. For me, I like to treat my big moods like a toddler throwing a tantrum. So if you guys don't have kids, or if you're like, my kids throw tantrums, but I don't know how to deal with them, that's totally valid, by the way. Let me see. There we go. Okay. Hide that for a moment so I don't get distracted. But basically, you want to treat it like a toddler throwing a tantrum, because when my kids throw tantrums, I try to get to the heart of the issue. Oftentimes there isn't one. If you have toddlers, there's usually not a good reason that they're upset. They just are. And so I try to get to the heart of it. And then if there is something at the heart, we deal with that. But if there's not, I still offer them compassion and a hug. And I'm like, hey, how can mommy help you right now? Then I offer them like sensory needs. I'm like, do you want your headphones? Would you like a juice box? Are you hungry? Right? Like, how can I help? Then if they're still losing it, I'm like, okay, mommy's going to go put her headphones on for 5 minutes. And then I'll come back and I'll check on you. Okay. But in those 5 minutes, you do what you need to do. If you need to be upset, you get to be upset, So anyway, that's kind of how I treat my toddlers when they're having a tantrum. And that's how I like to treat my really big mood swings. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Like, I hear you. You're really going through it right now. It does not feel good, does it? And they're like, no, it feels terrible. And I'm so upset. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. I hear that totally. And then I attend to my sensory needs, right? I put on noise canceling headphones, or I change my outfit if my outfit is overstimulating me, or I go somewhere quiet and dark if I can. And then from there, I give myself a healthy temporary distraction. This is where I think some people fall into avoidance. They're just like, oh, this emotion is too big. I can't handle it right now. So I'll come back to it later. I'll come back to it later. I'll come back to it later. And then they don't. That doesn't work. Like, imagine if you did that to a kid having a tantrum and you just like never came back to check in on them. That would not work, right? They would feel very abandoned, and it would probably make the tantrum worse. This is what happens when we try to avoid our emotions. It makes them worse. They get bigger because they're like, oh, you can avoid me. You can ignore me. I'll just get bigger until you can't. That is what our emotions do, like full stop. Or at least that's what mine do. So then what I do after I've taken care of my sensory needs, I've offered myself some compassion, I give myself a healthy temporary distraction. So like last night, I was feeling a little bit of distress. Not a lot, not anything terrible, but it didn't feel great. And so I gave myself a coloring page, and I was like, I'm just going to finish this coloring page and then we'll check back in with these emotions. So I did the coloring page, and I listened to some silly YouTube that was completely unrelated to how I was feeling. And it was nice. I could tell I was still a little distressed, but then once I was done coloring, I came back to the emotion and I was like, you're still not feeling much better, are you? And this is going to happen sometimes. Sometimes healthy distraction doesn't actually make the emotion better, right? So then what I did is I offered myself a different distraction. Again, temporary, but I offered myself something else that might lessen the load of what I was experiencing. And for me, that was Pinterest. Pinterest is, I just like all of these completely unhinged memes on there. And I have a board called Vibes, and it's completely unhinged. It's really fun. Anyway, so I did that for a little bit, and then I started sharing them with my husband, and I was like, oh, I do feel a little better. And then I was able to say like, okay, yes, you felt some distress, but that distress didn't ruin your whole day. Look at that. And like that was really powerful for me. And so anyway, that's kind of that's one of my tools. It's actually not in the course. Maybe I'll add a bonus to the course because I do think that's a valuable tool. The course actually goes through 3 main strategies that I use to deal with emotional dysregulation, which are grief, sleep, and wise mind. So you might be like, what the heck is grief doing in there? But I think there's a lot of grief involved for those of us who are very sensitive and very emotional people. I think there's a lot of grief about how long many of us have spent trying to be less emotional when we simply can't do that. I think there's a lot of grief around all the time wasted trying to be someone different when we could have just been ourselves this whole time. There's a lot of feelings of loss when it comes to being a super emotional person, and I think it's better to deal with that outright than try to pretend it's not there. So that's the first whole section. There's 3 different lessons on that, and how to cope with all of that. Then the second section is all about sleep because holy shit, did my life change when I started getting enough sleep. Like, which I know sounds so simple and so stupid and like, duh, Megan. But I'm telling you, it changed my life. It changed my life. I have healed so much more in the last 5 years because I've been getting good sleep compared to the like 6 or 7 years before that I was trying to do healing work and I couldn't because I wasn't sleeping. Oh my gosh. And literally, it's so funny. My sleep actually got a lot better when I had a baby, which no one like I'm not telling you to have a kid, but I am saying it got a lot better because people were like, "Oh, just sleep when the baby sleeps." And I'm autistic, so I took that very literally, and so I did. And yeah, the first week or 2 were still brutal, but after that, I slept when the baby slept. And guess what? Newborns sleep a lot. And I was getting way more sleep than I was when I was like in college or in grad school. And when I started getting more sleep, oh my goodness, it just opened the floodgates for me, and not in a bad way, not in an overwhelming way. It opened the floodgates in the sense of like, "Oh my gosh, I have enough energy to feel my emotions now. I don't feel like I'm drown." It made the tsunami of my emotions a little smaller. It still wasn't like a gentle ocean wave, but it was a tidal wave as opposed to a tsunami, right? Which is definitely different. Um so sleep made a big difference for me. And that whole section, excuse me, of the Managing Mood Swings course is kind of like why, like, okay, one of the aspects I explore is sleep and identity because a lot of people, especially creative people like me, I went to grad school for poetry, right? Like very creative type. A lot of us take pride in not getting enough sleep, which I think is really toxic and unhelpful for us, right? And so I pick apart sleep and identity in the course, but we also talk about sleep hygiene and then also sleep hygiene for highly emotional people because let's face it, our solutions, our coping skills are gonna be a little different, right? Oof, I haven't gotten a lot of good sleep, but the last 3-ish weeks I've been dealing with terminal insomnia, like 3 or 4 hours a night. Yes. Okay. Insomnia is a bitch, and I am not qualified to give like super helpful advice on insomnia specifically because I've never really dealt with it. I've always been able to fall asleep, and I'm not bragging. I want to be transparent. Like that's not something I deal with. When I wasn't sleeping, it wasn't because I had insomnia. It was because I had energy and I was excited and I wanted to do stuff with it. Or it was because I felt like the world was ending and I couldn't sleep because everything hurt and, whatever. So my sleep issues were much more related to identity and emotions rather than to insomnia. So if you're dealing with insomnia, this course might not be the one for you, or at least this section of the course might not be. But that being said, it still might be helpful. A lot of the sleep hygiene stuff that doesn't work for neurodivergent people with lots of emotions, stuff like that. The like neurodivergent specific sleep hygiene that I offer in the course might be helpful for some insomniacs, but it also might be stuff you've tried before and you're like, this isn't helpful. And so I understand. So take that with a grain of salt when you go to buy the course. Like that whole section might not apply to you, right? Oh, the end of the sleep cycle. Like I go to sleep fine, then wake up at 3 a.m. Oh, that's so interesting. I do that sometimes. Huh. But I go to sleep at like 9 or 10. So if I wake up at 3 a.m., that's still like 5 or 6 hours of sleep. So I get a lot of sleep, y'all, honestly. I sleep at least 9 hours a night, at least 9 hours a night, and part of that is because I'm in, like, ADHD burnout. I'm gonna make a video on that coming out next week, but part of that is also I everybody has different sleep needs, and I'm making up for 6 years of college where I didn't sleep, and yeah, it's been a long time since I graduated from college, so you would think I'd be caught up, but I just don't think I am yet, so yeah. Yeah. So that's the second, like, section of the Managing Mood Swings course is all about sleep because that changed my mood swings dramatically. And then the third section is about wise mind. Now, wise mind is a concept that comes from dialectical behavioral therapy, and I am not qualified to do therapy, so that's not what this is. I am a life coach. I am not a therapist. However, I do think it's possible for life coaches to talk about therapeutic tools, right, without necessarily offering therapy. Because anyone can go read a book about dialectical behavioral therapy and then teach you what they learned, you know? So, anyway, I've done a lot of DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, in therapy myself. And a big part of DBT is something called wise mind. So basically, there's this idea that you have a hyper logical part of your brain and a hyper emotional part of your brain, and neither one of them tells the whole story of what's going on their own. The best way to get the most reliable version of reality is to bring them together, right? And what was I thinking? So, and when you bring them together, that's called wise mind. That's where we can find wisdom, right? So, there are a couple of things that I teach in the course about wise mind and about how, like, you know, your logic is not superior to your emotions, but also your emotions don't get to run the show all by themselves either. It's really better when we bring them together and they work together. And then one of the bonuses for the course is actually me showing you how to do a specific journaling exercise that I developed that I just call, like, wise mind journaling. But it's very simple. You just open up a journal to 2 blank pages. On the left, you write down all of your emotions, full stop, no intellectualization, no rationalization, no like, well, but I shouldn't feel this. No, how do you feel? Even if it's gross, even if you hate it, right? Then on the right side, I want you to write down facts about the situation, like stuff that would be admissible as evidence in a court of law, like facts, not she was passive aggressive. No, no, no. You can't prove that. She said this, you know, that kind of fact. Then all I do, you can turn the page and write on a third page if you want, but I honestly just look at both pages and I just read them over. And I'm like, how do my emotions make sense given the facts? And if the answer is no, that's okay, by the way. But oftentimes I find the answer is, oh, well, my emotions are a little bigger than they necessarily need to be, but it does follow. Like, there is a logic here. And I think that's often what Wise Mind shows us is that our emotions have their own type of logic and they're not totally divorced from logic and reason and sense. You know, they aren't. They're often directly related. And yeah, so that's the wise mind journaling exercise. So that's one of the bonuses. There's a couple other bonuses in there. There's some EFT tapping. If you've never heard of that, EFT stands for emotional freedom techniques. And EFT tapping is where you tap these really specific spots. And as you tap, you talk yourself through a difficult or big emotion. And there's lots of ways to do it, but the way I tend to do EFT is, like, when I start, I'm like, okay, this is my feeling. This is how I feel. I'm not holding back, right? Then, as I move into the middle of the exercise, I validate that feeling. Well, it makes sense that you're feeling that way because, right? Then I finish with a very gentle kind of reframe, like, not a reframe in, like, the gaslighting and validation kind of way, but just a gentle reframe of, like, what if your emotions made sense and you were able to make a different choice that felt better for you? Like, that's a big one for me because I grew up, like I said, I was very, very sensitive as a kid. And so I grew up hearing all the time, you know, you're allowed to feel whatever you feel, but that doesn't mean you get to act however you want to act. And that was kind of how it was framed. Like, I was using my emotions as an excuse for poor behavior. And I want to be super clear here. I was an extraordinarily well behaved child. Now, as a teenager, we had a little more issues, but as a child, I was unbelievably well behaved. Right. And so this judgment, this shame about how my emotions were going to lead to like bad behavior was completely unfounded. But I didn't know that at the time, right? I was a kid. I believed everything that was told to me, partially because I was young, partially because I was autistic, partially because of enmeshment, partially because of a whole bunch of stuff, right? But I believed it. I believed that if I let myself feel my emotions too much, it would lead to bad behavior. That was very much what was ingrained in me from a young age. And what Wise Mind teaches us, and what I really hope the Managing Mood Swings course teaches you in general, is this idea that your emotions are not a gateway drug to like bad stuff, right? They're not a gateway to bad behavior or to making mistakes or to hurting people. Your emotions are an essential part of your experience, even when they're huge. And that I think is how we can ride the wave even when it's a tsunami, through validation, by saying, wow, that's a tsunami. Instead of, I think a lot of us grew up with parents who kind of looked at our tsunami and said, why are you turning it into a tsunami? Like it was our fault. Like stop turning it. Don't turn it into a tsunami. Just let it be a wave. I didn't turn it into shit. It just is, right? But we were always framed as being at fault for our big emotions. And I think this is a hugely healing component of dealing with mood swings, is just recognizing that it's not your fault. It's not your fault that you feel big stuff, especially right now. The world is on fire, you guys. It makes sense to feel really big stuff about that. And anyone who tells you it doesn't, anyone who tells you you're exaggerating, they're sticking their head in the sand, you know? And that is just not something you need to join them in doing. So, okay, that's my whole talk. That's my spiel. Let me know, do you guys have questions? What do you want to talk about when it comes to emotions, emotional dysregulation, mood swings, coping skills? Let me know. Put stuff in the chat. I want to talk to you guys, but I'm out of things to say on my own. So if you want the live to keep going, I need some comments and questions. And if not, if there aren't questions or anything, that's totally fine. But I will probably go ahead and shut things down then, because that's all I have to say. Any book updates? Oh my goodness, Starshade, that's so sweet. Thank you. Yes. So I don't remember what the last update I gave you guys was, but basically I have to fix a couple of things for legal. I think that's it. I have to fix a couple of things for legal. And then it will go to a copywriter. Then it'll go to a proofreader. Then we'll send out copies to people who we want to read it, to put a blurb on the back. And then we'll get the blurbs, and then they'll finish up the cover design, which I just recommended a couple covers I liked to the designer. Like, hey, I like these. This is kind of the vibe I'm looking for. And then it'll be out. So I have no clue how fast that's going to move. Like it could be 2 or 3 months. It could be the rest of the year. I have no idea how fast this is going to move, but I'm really excited. I do want to say, and this is something I'll probably post in my community tab as well. If you contributed to the book at all, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm writing a book about ADHD, what it's like to be both autistic and ADHD, and how to like live in the world. A couple of times here on this YouTube channel, I've posted like, hey, I would love your input on what disability means to you, or hey, I would love your input on what unmasking looks like, or, you know, whatever. If you answered any of those forms, because I did not collect email addresses, because I wanted them to be able to be anonymous, because I did not collect email addresses, every single quote is going to be fully anonymous, even if you gave your name, like your first name or initials or anything. Everything's going to be fully anonymous, because apparently if I want to use people's names, I need their express written permission, and I don't have a way to contact everybody. I don't know where to find everyone. So unfortunately, all of the quotes will be fully anonymous. Now, granted, the only difference there is it was going to say like your name next to it, but like lots of people could have that name, so they wouldn't necessarily know it's you anyway. But the laws about permission are very, very strict. And I didn't know that. Otherwise, I would have collected email addresses. That way I could get you guys' permission to use your names if you wanted. But now all of the quotes included in the book will be fully anonymous, because your girl didn't know any better. I hope that's okay with everyone. I really apologize for anyone who wanted to see their name in the book. I really apologize. I just didn't know. Probably should have collected email addresses. That probably would have been smart, but I didn't do it. So there's no going back now. There's no fixing it. So anyway, that's book updates. Very exciting. I don't know what the final title is going to be, but as of right now, the working title is I'm ADHD. Now what? Which I actually really like, because I can't tell you the number of people who book like discovery calls with me, which by the way, you can do at the description of this video if you would like. Just a chance to get to know me, see if we should work together in a coaching capacity. But I've had a lot of people on discovery calls be like, yeah, I got diagnosed, but I don't know what to do now. And that's really what I want this book to be. Like it's divided into 3 parts. The first part is like diagnosis, like how to even figure out that you're ADHD. The second part is daily living, like, okay, what do we do now? How do I live my life? And then part 3 is healing with ADHD and like all the healing stuff we got to go through. So I'm in love with my book. Not to like toot my own horn, I just have worked really hard on it and I love it very much. And I hope that you all love it just as much. If you want to get on the wait list to buy the book, let me drop that in the chat. It's not available for purchase yet, but if you want to get on the wait list, that way you receive emails from me in regards to the book. So it's a very simple little form that you can fill out right there, and just send me your email address so that I can let you know when the book is out. And if you're watching the replay of this, it's just the neurocuriosityclub.com/book-waitlist. So that's where you can go get that, because I don't think I put that in the description, although I can always go back and add it, I suppose. All right, folks, any other questions? Anything else that we need to talk about? Let me know, and I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to chat, but if there's no other questions, I am out of things to talk about, to be honest with you. So I'm probably going to go eat some lunch, watch a little YouTube. I'm very excited. I have a couple of videos that I'm really excited for and really proud of that are coming up here soon. I say proud of, I haven't even made them yet. I'm a very last minute YouTube creator. But I'm very excited and very proud of some of the ideas that I've been having lately for this YouTube channel. So I'm pretty psyched. This should be fun. There's a couple of really good stuff coming up. So keep an eye out. If you're not subscribed yet, you should be. Go subscribe so that you don't miss anything. If you don't know me that well, by the way, hello. My name is Megan. I'm autistic. I'm ADHD. I create a lot of content about autism and ADHD and about neurodivergence in general. I'm a life coach. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a doctor, but I am a life coach. Hi, Cool Kids Army. Hello. I am a life coach, which basically just means I can use my lived experience to help guide you through yours. And I am accepting clients right now. I do one-on-one coaching, but I also have several groups that you can join. Those should be in the description below. There's ways to work with me. If we are going to do coaching, please do not sign up if you are under 18. I do not have a certification to work with minors, and so I don't. Personally, I think that's something you should be certified in order to do. So, let's see. I've just watched your 9 ADHD productivity hacks and saw you were live, so I thought I'd pop in. Oh my goodness. Hi. Hello. I hope that video was helpful. I've had a lot of people tell me, they're like, okay, usually these videos are useless, and this one actually helped. So fingers crossed. Oh, you've got a cold, Cool Kids Army. That's the worst. My family's been sick since Christmas. It's been a nightmare. We had bronchitis. We had walking pneumonia. We've had 2 stomach bugs. It's been crazy, like totally crazy. Although the stomach bug makes sense. Somebody did throw up on my kid at daycare, so he brought that home. So that's super fun. Let's see. I don't know if you already answered this. Okay, yeah. How did you figure out you were actually autistic after you thought you weren't? Yes. Okay. Let's walk through this because it's a wild journey. So some of you know that I was misdiagnosed with bipolar for 6 years. So basically, I started therapy at 19, got diagnosed with bipolar disorder type 2, and I lived with that diagnosis for 6 years, and then basically all of while I was in school. Then I graduated and I moved back home and I got a different therapist who immediately was like, her exact words were, "If you have bipolar, it's a very unusual type." And I was like, "Oh, well then what do you think's going on?" And she was actually the first person to say, "I think you have ADHD." And I was like, "I do not. You are wrong." She was right. But I didn't know that at the time. So we kind of dismissed that. And then we started doing a lot of trauma work, and that really explained a lot, right? It explained a lot of stuff for me. But then some like autism content started coming up on my TikTok in 2020, and I was like, I think I might be autistic. So I did a lot of research. I read articles, I read books, I followed more and more creators, and I was like, this really lines up with my experience. And I brought it up to a therapist. And she said, "Well, I work with neurodivergent people, and you don't really, that's never felt right for me, for your diagnosis, basically." And I was so devastated. I just wanted to be believed, I guess, and I wasn't. And I thought I was being a hypochondriac and over exaggerating and being stupid, basically. And I was really overwhelmed and sad. And so I just wanted to be good. And so I took it all back. I made a video on here on YouTube that's still up that says I'm not autistic. Um, I got a lot of feedback, by the way, on that video. I was on TikTok at the time. I'm not on there anymore, but I was on TikTok at the time. I got a lot of feedback from people when I came out as not autistic saying, "Girl, you are very autistic. Like, do not listen to this therapist." But I didn't want to trust random people over my therapist, who I did really trust at the time. She later dropped me and stopped working with me because she found out I was a life coach, which I wasn't hiding from her. It just didn't come up. But when I disclosed that, she was like, "Yeah, you're coming to therapy, learning therapy skills, and then disseminating therapy without a license," which is not what I do, by the way. Therapy and life coaching are very different. Um, anyway, we can talk about that in a minute if you like. So I stopped seeing her shortly after all of that. And it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks after I stopped seeing her that I realized what happened. And I realized I was like, oh, I was trying to make her happy. I was people pleasing. I am definitely autistic. But by that time, I was so confused. I had gone back and forth so much. And I had been so obsessed with my mental health for so long, like truly obsessed. Like, I could not think about anything else most days. It was really, really bad. It almost ruined my marriage. It almost ruined my life. It almost killed me several times. It's really like, when I say obsessed, I mean it. But I was just so confused that at that point I was like, I think I need to go through the professional assessment process with someone I trust. So I went to the Neuroclastic Directory of Diagnosticians. Let me grab that link for you guys and I can drop it in the chat. So this is like a big directory of assessors and diagnosticians who are really autism affirming. And I found one in my area, and it's a global directory, by the way. I want to say the Western Cape of Africa, New South Wales and Victoria in Australia, Alberta, British Columbia, Ontario, and Quebec in Canada. Like there's lots of places on there. But I found someone close to me, like within 2 hours. So I went, and before I went, I emailed her and I said, "Hey, I'm self-diagnosed autistic. If you tell me I'm not autistic, you better have a really good explanation for what is going on. And it better not be depression and anxiety again, because I know that's not the full explanation." And that's literally how I said it. I was very aggressive, but I didn't know how else to say it. So she was very kind. She responded and said, "Hey, our waitlist time is this long. I fully respect self-diagnosis, and I'm ready to work with you and figure out what's going on." And to this day, my assessor is probably the single most competent mental health professional I've ever worked with. She's amazing. She is validating. She's kind. And she has answered some of my follow-up questions over the years. I've emailed her a couple times to be like, "Hey, what about this? Did you notice any signs of this?" And she, so that was really helpful. So I went through the assessment process, and it was supposed to just be for autism, but halfway through she was like, we need to assess you for ADHD as well. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's how I came out the other side with an official autism and ADHD diagnosis. And that's how I figured out I was autistic, even though I thought I wasn't for a time. So I hope that helps. Let me know if you have questions. It's kind of a lot. Let's see. OMG, same. I was misdiagnosed with bipolar at 16 or 17. Then when I was 22, I was in an outpatient program. My clinician was like, yeah, this definitely isn't bipolar. And boom, ADHD. Yeah. Yeah. I'm able to get diagnosed with dyslexia 2 times. It's a long story. It's because of my vision and some other stuff. Yeah. I've heard getting diagnosed with dyslexia can be tricky, but also it's really helpful to know. So it's important. That's so cool. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long journey, but honestly, I feel so much more myself now that I know about my autism and ADHD than I ever have before. Ever. And my brain is still like, I do have a lot of health anxiety, which used to be called hypochondria. I do have a lot of health anxiety, especially around my mental health. And I still obsess over diagnoses sometimes, but I am noticing it's often the week before my period because I found out I also have PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is like PMS, except it tries to kill you. So I'm able to predict it a little better now and be like, oh, it's the week before my, I'm from the Midwest. Can you tell? It's the week before my period. If I start obsessing over a new label, I can trust that it will probably go away in a couple of days and I can ride this out, instead of like what used to happen before I realized it was related to my PMDD. It was like, oh my goodness, I'm obsessing over a new label. This must be it. This is the end. I'm stupid. I'm terrible. Blah, 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 blah. Like everything would spiral. And so being able to recognize this is why this is happening is very helpful. See, PMDD, I'm learning about this. Yeah, Lish, that's awesome. It is a bitch. Sorry, not to swear too much, but it is rough. It is really, really rough. But it's also very helpful to know about for sure. I've already been diagnosed with dyslexia once, but we realized this most likely, because of your vision, but now I've got the best glasses prescription for me, but I still struggle with reading. Yeah, I'm really glad that you figured that out, Cool Kids Army, because that is, because I got good grades, no one noticed. Yeah. Because I was so well behaved, no one noticed, but I was well behaved because of the trauma. And a little bit because of the autism. I'm a big rule person, but only rules that make sense to me. If they don't make sense to me, like fuck them. But anyway, it's so great you were able to find an affirming assessor. My therapist of 12 years thinks I'm probably autistic, but doesn't have the credentials to diagnose me. So I'm saving up to afford an assessment. Yeah, that's great. What was I going to say? I got distracted. The chat's kind of blowing up. That's great. I love it. But yeah, assessment can be really expensive. I think for many of us it's worth it, and for many of us it's not. And so you just got to decide like if that's something you want. Because for a lot of us, the official piece of paper doesn't do much. But for some of us, it really does. It can change your life. So it just depends. Just depends. Binocular vision dysfunction. I have heard of that. Yeah, absolutely. It's prevalent with those who are ADHD autistic and can play a role in that. Yeah, I've heard of that, but I don't know too much about it, to be honest. Yep, my hormones try to kill me monthly, and perimenopause with PMDD is just another level of hell. Oh, Heather. Yeah, I am not looking forward to that. I'm very nervous. But okay, here is some extremely not medical advice. This is not medical advice. I am not qualified to give medical advice, right? Okay. Huge disclaimer. That being said, I have heard a ton of people with PMDD talking about the usefulness of Pepcid or famotidine. Something about the antihistamine seems to really, really help during that week. So that's something I'm going to try next month when I'm in that part of my cycle. Because right now my psychiatrist was like, yeah, you can take a little bit more of this certain medication. And it does help, but it helps because it zonks me out. And that makes it really hard for me to work and do my stuff, which granted, if I just have to take 2 or 3 days off a month to deal with my PMDD, then I have to. But if I could take like Pepcid instead and be able to still function and not just be like a total zombie for 3 days, like that would be helpful. So Wouldn't really care if I never got diagnosed with autism, but I will care if I never get diagnosed with dyspraxia. Dyspraxia hurts like shit sometimes. I love PE, but it hurts. Yeah. Yeah. That's always so important to know and important to talk about, like the diagnoses that we're like, yeah, this one is like, it just is. Like that's how I feel about my PMDD. Even though it can be really debilitating, it's less of an identity thing for me than autism and ADHD. It's more like, yeah, this is like this shitty thing that I have. Like versus autism and ADHD are much more like this is a huge part of me and my essence, and that feels different. So figured out I was ADHD around 35 and eventually got it assessed at 40. Then like 5 months ago realized I was autistic too. So at 42 I'm having lots of, oh, that was autism. Yes, yes. That's very familiar to me and to lots of my clients. I have several clients who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and they also are looking back on a lifetime or half a lifetime of, oh shit, that was the tism. So, excuse me. Yeah, I know that was a big part of getting my diagnosis, and it like just all the realizations can be a lot sometimes. Stairs are my nightmare. Oh, yeah. Tried the Pepsid and Allegro routine for MCAS, but didn't do the trick for me. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, Heather. Yeah, I just trying to share the wisdom of the group, starting hormone replacement, life-changing. Oh, I'm so glad. Oh, Heather, that's great. That was something my parents really did their due diligence when my mental health started falling apart. I was just like, put me on the meds. Like, I just need to feel better. And they were like, no, we need to look and see what's happening. It could be something physical that they're blaming on a mental health issue, which now looking back, I'm like, that was good parenting. Sort of. They could have done it in a nicer way, but still, that was good parenting to make sure it wasn't a physical issue that was just getting blown off as like some mental health thing that's like not a big deal. But that's not what was happening. My mental health team was like, no, she's very mentally ill and needs help. And my parents were like, mental health isn't, and it was a whole thing. But my parents got my hormones tested when I was 20, just to see like, are these results normal? Could the hormones be the problem? And as far as I remember, everything was pretty much in the normal range. There was one or two things that were like a little low or a little high, I think, but generally like nothing stood out to the hormone doctor as like something we needed to do anything about. So that was good at least. But like I said, that was when I was 20. That was a decade ago. So something I might want to look into in the future. I've been thinking I might be autistic for more than a month now, and I've had a few times where I've been scared I'm trying to force it, like I wanna have a label. When I go through thoroughly researched autistic symptoms, I can think of one or more examples from childhood. I'm honestly scared of knowing if I'm autistic or not. Yeah. So Kaylin, I also have a lot of fear about like, do I just want a label? Do I just want to like fit in with other people? Which by the way is a very autistic thing to be like, I know how I'll find friends with a diagnosis. Like that is a very autistic way of thinking. Just to throw that in the ring for you. But that's kind of what I was afraid I was doing. Like I just want to fit in. I just want to fit in somewhere. Again, very autistic. One of the best pieces of advice that I ever got was, okay, autistic or not autistic, there are certain accommodations that are going to make your life easier. Start testing out accommodations, and if they help you and they're common in the autistic community, you might be autistic. Or you might not be, and those accommodations just help. Labels matter. And I made a whole video about this last week. So you can go check that out, or the week before. I don't know. I made it recently. Labels matter profoundly, right? But they don't do the work for us, right? They don't do the work for us. They just tell us what work to do, what work is going to be most effective. And that matters, obviously. But also, oh, no, don't worry, Kaylin. It's fine. But also don't beat yourself up for being afraid, because a lot of us, we don't want to insert ourselves into a community where we don't belong. But what if you belong there? What if you do belong and you're keeping yourself away from a community because you're afraid? Like, let's find ways to get the support we need, right? And by the way, all of my coaching offers, everything in my shop is available to people who are questioning. I would so much rather you join a coaching program with me or buy something from my shop and then find out later, oh, I'm not ADHD, or oh, I don't have PMDD. That's not right. I would so much rather you join the community during the time when you need us and be wrong than not join the community at the time when you need us and be alone. Does that make sense? I want you to have support, and I would love to be part of that. So, yeah. The difficult part was I thought everyone was in this much pain when they were moving around. But then I got friends and they were like, nope, this ain't normal. My friends helped me so much. Oh, Cool Kids Army, that's amazing. I think being able to compare life experiences is such a valuable thing. Like I think there's lots of value in academic research and clinical research. Obviously, that stuff is important. And lived experience, also hugely important, right? Imposter syndrome is real. It really is. It really, really is. Totally. Totally, totally. All right. Are there any other questions before we go? I've got like 8 minutes left if you guys want to chat about anything. Make sure you check out the Managing Mood Swings course. That is 50% off this weekend only. There we go. Use code MOODSWING. There we go. So you can get that for 50% off. It's usually $67, but now it'll be like $33.50 or something like that. So you can get it 50% off this weekend if you would like. Let's see. Your fear is valid, Kaylin. Yeah, you're not alone in this. Haven't had a clinical diagnosis too, but I'm more excited than scared, even if I am self-diagnosed. Yeah, self-diagnosis is valid. Not only is it valid, but Devin Price claims it's liberatory, and I agree personally. Cool Kids Army. I really want to tell my PE teacher, but I'm scared. Yeah, I get that because you don't have the official diagnosis of dyspraxia, or do you? Because if you have the official diagnosis, you should let them know. Just be like, hey, I have this, and here's my documentation, and okay, no, okay. That's where it can get tricky because you don't want to be like, I have this. And they're like, where's the proof? And you're like, I don't have any. And it's like, then you're just trying to get out of PE because lots of people try to get out of PE for various reasons. A lot of it has to do with pain, but some of it just has to do with not wanting to get sweaty, which, by the way, can be a sensory thing as well. So I hear you. Maybe talk to some of your friends about how to talk to the teacher about it, or maybe talk to your parents if they're open to having that discussion, or even to the school counselor potentially. Oh, you love PE. It just hurts. Yeah. And that's the thing. If you love PE, it'll come across in the way you talk to your teacher. Like, I love this class, but certain things are hard for me. Is there any way we could make this accommodation or this accommodation? That's why I started my channel. I found so much solace in others' stories. Oh, Heather, that's great. I'll have to check out your channel. Drop the link in the chat. Thank you guys. I'm nervous, but I'm willing to try. Yeah, I got assessed autism, but told my therapist I didn't want the legal diagnosis because of the legal stigmas, and I'm lucky to not have very challenging sensory issues. Yeah. There are definitely some legal issues with being diagnosed as autistic. Like if I ever wanted to go to, I think, Canada or even Australia or potentially places in the UK, like I would have a hard time immigrating with an autism diagnosis on my chart, right? If something were to ever happen with custody of my kids, like again, that could come into play. So there are downsides. There are absolutely downsides to a professional diagnosis, and self-diagnosis does not have to be a stepping stone to professional diagnosis. Self-diagnosis can be enough on its own. I firmly believe this. If you disagree, that is more than welcome, but please be kind, right? That's all. Please be kind. Let's see. Anything else we want to chat about? Any other questions? Anybody need advice or anything like that? Let me know. What else can I do for you all? Go get the course. It's half off. I'm probably not going to run another half off sale for a while. So I don't know about the legal hangups. I didn't know about illegal hangups about a diagnosis. Thank you. Of course, yeah, there are repercussions for sure. And it's just not always worth it for people. Depends on your situation. For me, I have such intense health anxiety that self-diagnosis was going to be really difficult for me to trust myself. And yes, I probably could have done the work to work on my self-trust, but I was so obsessed with my mental health that I couldn't do that work. I needed the professional diagnosis so that I could let go of the obsession, so that I could learn to trust myself. At least that was the order it had to go in for me, I think. Even if I could go back, I would do it again. But that doesn't mean I would recommend it to everyone. Okay, I can't post the link, but it's this channel I'm using now. Let's see. I'm going to try to open it because I want to see your channel. Heather McCarthy. Authentically Me, ADHD. Is that you? That's so great. Oh my gosh. I am a fake. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You're not, by the way, but I relate to that feeling so profoundly. Oh my goodness. This is so great. Oh, dude. Okay. Question for you, Heather. Do you want to like collab? Do you want to do something together? I don't know what we would do, but we should do something. Like I'm looking at doing some interviews and stuff on my channel. You should come join me. I don't know. I don't know what we could do, but we could do something just because I think I'm always looking to work with other people and yeah. Okay. Took the Aspie quiz. Turns out 93% chance I don't, your message got cut off, Sherry. I'm assuming 93% chance I am autistic, probably. That's why I needed to get my official diagnosis to answer my own internal need to know. Yeah. Heather, I'm going to have you, if you want anyway, email me. There we go. Megan at the neurocuriosityclub.com. Just send me an email and we can see if we can work something out because I think that would be really fun and really cool. Also, this is a total side note. Holy cow, we're very off track now, but that's okay. I am looking at likely running a summit in June about ADHD specifically. So if you didn't know, I run a summit every January about neurodivergence in general, but I really try to make it about neurodivergence in general. So like we had Michelle Hammer from Schizophrenic NYC come this year, and we had Katie Keach, who talks about being plural. They're also ADHD or ADHD, but they talk about being plural as well. And we had people talk about CPTSD, OCD, a whole bunch of cool stuff, but it's very broad. I'm thinking in June, I might run a summit about ADHD specifically, what it's like to be both autistic and ADHD. And I think maybe you could be a really good person to come speak potentially if you want to. I really shouldn't be recruiting people already. It's too early. I have a whole other summit to plan for March, which I haven't even gotten started on. So I need to do that first. Anyway, I'm on IG too. We can message there. I recommend emailing me. I'm not actually on Instagram very much anymore. Just so you know. Let's see, ADHD if I go for the official diagnosis. Yeah, that's great, Sherry. This is a great concept, Megan. I really hope this pushes through. Yeah. The ADHD summit, is that what you mean, Lish? Because yes, I would love to do that. I want to do it. It's just, I need it to make more money than my recent January summit made. Because my January summit almost cost me money and it required a ton of work. And so I just have to adjust my strategy a little bit, make sure the next summit makes a little more money because I need it to do so. It's just a big part of my business. And granted, the summit itself will be free, of course, but there's always like the goodie bag and stuff like that. Did the Aspie quiz and I'm 96%. I don't remember what I got. Hold on. Where I don't know where my autism binder is. I have my ADHD binder right here. Oh wait, no, this is the autism one. Okay, hold on. Hold, please. Hold, please. There we go. I got the Aspie quiz. Mine doesn't have like a percentage chance that I'm autistic. I got a 126 out of 200 for my autism cluster and an 84 out of 200 for my neurotypical cluster. So if I'm doing the math, 126 divided by 200 equals, so that's a 63%, which makes sense. Like I'm definitely a very ADHD heavy auDHDer, and that can mask a lot of my autistic traits, even though they're totally there. Let's see. Hopefully you'll get more funds this time around. Yes, I agree. And I think I will. I just going to require a couple business tweaks and it's all good. Aspie quiz got a 99%. Yeah, good luck with the summit. Oh, thank you. I hope to see you all there. Yeah, the data visualization on that one is great. Email is my yoga business name. Oh, totally fine. Yeah, just let me know it's you. Be like, hey, I was on the live and you said we should connect, all good. All right, y'all. It is 1:02. Right now my ADHD is in charge. Yeah, that's how I live most of my life, but my autism is like always running in the background. That's kind of how I feel. Like ADHD runs the show and autism like fights. It's just like, no, we want to do this, but it's not strong enough to be in charge. That's kind of how mine feels anyway. ADHD is in charge, but autism is always there. At least generally that's how I feel lately anyway. Okay, y'all. Well, I'm going to go get some lunch, watch some YouTube, and then get to work. All right. Bye, Cool Kids Army. Much love and support from me to you as well. Okay. Bye, guys.